Quote, "The committee believes on the basis of the evidence available that President John F. Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy," end quote. The House Select Committee on Assassinations in its 1979 report. Was it a conspiracy, as that congressional committee and most Americans now believe? And if it was, what part did Jack Ruby play? Jack Ruby, the man who killed President Kennedy. Was he the hero in this crime drama of the century, or was he merely an accomplice in one of history's most sinister murder plots? Today we'll put Jack Ruby on trial and show you a shocking side to this mystery man. Among our guests, ladies and gentlemen, in her first American television interview ever, this is Beverly Oliver. She is here to break her 28-year-long silence about her friend, Jack Ruby. She will tell us today about the day that Jack Ruby allegedly introduced her to none other than Lee Harvey Oswald. She will also give us her eyewitness account of JFK's assassination. She was there. And also of Ruby's many alleged meetings with mob kingpins. But I must warn you, as our other studio guests will soon attest, just as the facts surrounding JFK's assassination are still shrouded in mystery, so are the motives and the background of this fellow, Jack Ruby. Who was this man? For most of us, we're about to learn more about this assassin's assassin than we ever knew. There is a new and sure-to-be controversial movie just released called Ruby. We incorporate that in the piece you're about to see. Take a look, please. Jack Ruby stepped into the history books as he stepped down into the Dallas police station to watch the newly accused Kennedy killer, Lee Harvey Oswald, being transferred to a new jail. Danny Aiello retraces these famous footsteps in the new movie Ruby, which opened around the country this weekend. But what do we really know about the man who pulled the trigger and fired the second Dallas shot heard around the world? Nearly 3 decades later, that shot still rings in our ears.
Hey, how many hits did you do in the old days, Jack? Chicago days? When you were a bag man and a shakedown of the Scrap Iron and Junk Handlers Union? And Leon Cook, who founded that union and gave you your first job, was shot in the back?
I walked on that.
It was self-defense?
I was questioned. I was released. And everyone knows it was Big John Martin pulled the trigger.
We know that he knew underworld figures, and he brushed shoulders. We knew that he knew FBI people. He brushed shoulders with them in the film. We knew that there were CIA people involved. And I personally think he was a guy that protected himself. He was probably carrying wires on everybody, you know.
In Dallas, Ruby was used as a police informant. He had easy access to police headquarters and even attended the briefing on the day Kennedy was killed, when Oswald was presented to the press.
In other words, I'm the only person in the background that knows the truth.
The only person who knows the truth, but in some twist of fate, some irony, Jack Ruby would die of cancer after being convicted and sentenced to die in the electric chair. He would die in jail of cancer. And as far as I know, I may be wrong on this, he had never been ill of that particular affliction. It had never been diagnosed before, just adding another element to this fantastic mystery that has plagued us for 28 years. Okay, Beverly Oliver, the singer at a nightclub next door to Jack Ruby's burlesque house, the Carousel Club. She was also the infamous Babushka lady, a JFK assassination witness. All right, here she is for her first time on American television. Beverly, welcome. Let me speak a little to you before I introduce our other guests. It is a distinguished panel. The day of the assassination, how far away were you standing from the bullet's impact on the president?
Just a little bit further, Geraldo, than you're standing from me now.
Just 20 feet or so?
20 to 30 feet.
You were filming?
Yes, I was taking motion pictures. And probably would have been the best pictures of the assassination because I had them on a zoom lens at the time that the fatal shot was fired.
We'll talk about what happened to your footage, but tell me what you saw through the lens. Tell us.
Well, I saw the President of the United States. The only shot that I remember would be what I would consider to be the fatal shot, because it was so evidently to me at the time from the front, because through the viewfinder of my camera on a zoom lens, it looked as though there was a whole bucket of blood thrown out the back of the President's head.
Okay, so in your opinion, the President was shot from the front of the
No doubt
motorcade.
about it. None.
Not from the rear where, of course, Lee Harvey
No way.
Oswald was. Okay,
No way.
That's an issue that will be discussed and debated for time immemorial. Jump now to when you were questioned by the FBI. Did they ask you for the footage?
Geraldo, our club was closed the Friday night and then Saturday night and, of course, Sunday night. Friday and Saturday in honor of the President being shot, and Sunday night because of our friend. And Monday night when I went back to work, our club had 2 sets of stairs that went upstairs to the club, and it was divided by a landing. And when I got to work that evening, there were 2 men waiting on the landing, and I had my makeup kit with me, as I always did. They introduced themselves, showed me ID, said they were with the FBI, and wanted to know if I was down there taking pictures, and I said, yes, sir. They said, have you had the film developed? And I said, no, sir. They said, you still have the film? And I said, yes, sir. And they said, where is it? I said, still in my camera and my makeup kit. They said, we would like to have those films. We want to develop them, look at them, and we'll get them back to you in a few days. I was 17 years old. Only a few years before that, Candy Bar, a stripper in downtown, had been arrested and sentenced, I think, to 15 years for possession of less than an ounce of marijuana. Inside my makeup kit was a whole Prince Albert tobacco can full of marijuana. I would have given them my soul if they'd asked me.
You had a stash of pot.
Yeah.
And it was keeping your film company.
Slightly more than an ounce.
Uh-huh. So you rummage around in your makeup kit. Did you?
I handed the tray to the FBI agent. I was occupying him. I gave him the tray, and I said, hold this for me. And I get the camera out, and I take the film out of the camera. I hand him the film. I put the camera back, take my makeup tray, and put it back in to my makeup kit and closed it, and was very grateful that they didn't want to search my bag.
How is it that we have never seen your film?
Because it was never returned to me. Still has not been to this day.
Have you requested it back?
I haven't, but there has been people who have requested it up on my behalf. Some of the researchers have.
But you swear you took these pictures?
I swear.
And that the FBI came, that was your left hand? And that the FBI came and took it away?
I'm not a Girl Scout anyway. Yes. Well, yes, it was. I later identified the man from a mug book, one of 4 mug books that was brought to me to go through. And in these mug books were doctors, lawyers, and Indian chiefs. Nowhere does it say FBI agent, doctor, law, just a mug book. And in the 3rd mug book, I came up on the man, and I said, this, without a doubt, is the man who took my film that night. And lo and behold, guess what? He was an FBI agent.
How do you know that Jack Ruby was a member of the mob? I mean, after all, you worked next door in the Colony Club. You didn't work in the Carousel, Jack's Club. How did you know about Jack?
Well, I don't know that Jack was a member of the mob. I mean, there were rumors all around Dallas, and there was definitely dark mobster-type figures that was there on occasion. I worked next door at the Colony Club for Abe Weinstein, and between our shows were staggered. And between shows, I would go next door to visit with my friends, one being Shari Angel and one being Jada or Janet Conforto.
Jada, I guess the headliner in Oswald's club.
Yes, at that time
this
it was
is her
because
card.
Shari.
I think we have it on ESS. You want to regale our audience with this, Jim Bob? Picture of Jada, the lead stripper in the club. Tell us about the time Jack Ruby, in probably your most sensational allegation, Beverly, introduced you to a man who turned out to be Lee Oswald, the man accused of assassinating the young and gracious 35th President of the United States.
One evening I had gone over to visit with Jada because we were going to a party that evening and something had come up to prevent me from going to the party. So I went over to tell her I wasn't going that night, and she was sitting at the corner of the runway with Jack Ruby and another man. And I just went over to the table and started talking to her to explain to her I wasn't going that evening. And Jack said, "Beverly, I want to introduce you to my friend Lee Oswald. He's with the CIA."
Stop,
17 years old.
Stop. Say that again, what she said.
He said, "This is my friend Lee Oswald. He is with the CIA." At 17 years old, I didn't know what the CIA was. I was not impressed. It didn't make any difference to me who he was with.
When did you next hear Oswald's name?
I remember seeing him in the club after hours at parties a couple of times, not for long periods of time after that. And then on the fateful Sunday, whenever Jack Ruby went into the basement of the police department and shot Lee Oswald, I immediately knew that this was the man that I had met in his club.
You understand, Beverly, that if what you're saying is true, and we have no reason to doubt you, you haven't, I don't know, you're here, we'll take you at your word. But if what you're saying is true, it is a major rewriting of history. If Jack Ruby knew Lee Oswald, the man he killed, the man who had killed the president, then it would make the whole thing stink of conspiracy to the extent that nobody could deny that it was a conspiracy.
Precisely. Precisely.
But there are others who have different points of view, even on this. Let me introduce some people. Hillel Silverman knew Jack Ruby. In fact, he was his religious mentor, his rabbi in Dallas. Rabbi Silverman visited Jack Ruby right after the shooting. 28 years later, he is still convinced that Ruby had no part in a conspiracy. Then, Rabbi, why in the world did Ruby kill Oswald?
I asked Jack Ruby that question the first morning after Oswald was killed. I entered his cell. I knew him very, very well. I asked him, Geraldo, what you would ask him. Why did you do it, Jack? He said, I did it as a patriotic American. This was his mindset. He was a very impetuous, a very volatile, a very emotional, unbalanced person. He thought he was doing the right thing. He loved Kennedy. This man killed Kennedy. He happened to be there. It was a coincidence. He told me he wanted to spare Jackie Kennedy coming back from Washington to the trial.
Beverly Oliver, your response.
Well, Jack was a very volatile person. He had a very quick temper. But I did not see Jack as an extremely patriotic person.
How could he be a patriot? He said he was a slime ball. He was a two-bit punk, a hood.
No.
He owned a strip joint. He paid off cops.
No. That's Dallas at that time. I'm sorry. But Jack was not a slime ball. He was not a scuzzball. He was very good to me. With all of his faults, he was a friend of mine. He was very good to me. He always treated me like a lady. He was always a gentleman in my presence. So you're going to have to talk to somebody about the slime ball. I didn't know that one.
Was Jack Ruby part of a conspiracy to murder President Kennedy?
No one in the world would want to believe anything different other than I do. I would love to believe that he wasn't. But I know what I saw. I know what I saw the day of the assassination. I know what I saw that Sunday. I don't know how it fits together, but I know what I saw.
Jack Ruby, the man, the mob, the murder, the focus of this edition of Geraldo.
To the Carousel Club here in Dallas, Texas.
The place is full of hoods.
These is businessmen, old friends who come out to support my club.
Mickey the Shoe from Cleveland, Sam Giancana from Chicago, Santos Alicante from New Orleans.
You represent Dallas, Jack.
Texas is the reliable place. And where is better in this country than Dallas?
It promises to be a film as controversial as Oliver Stone's JFK. Some say it is even more accurate. Well, we'll let you be the judge when you see it. Meet our other panelists. Tony Zoppi.
Geraldo, may
Yes, Rabbi.
I interject, continue
Go
the
ahead.
conversation. Jack Ruby was not a slimeball. He craved recognition. He had a terrible childhood. He was brought up in different foster homes. His mother was in an insane asylum.
According to David Scheim, the man who wrote Contract on America, Ruby once tried to rape a 14-year-old.
I don't know anything about Ruby raping a 14-year-old, but I did ask Ruby, and I visited with Ruby in his prison cell over 100 times. Did you know Oswald? Ever? Did you ever meet him? No. Were you part of any kind of a conspiracy? No. It was a happenstance. He implored me, Geraldo, to intervene with the Warren Commission. He wanted to take a lie detector test. I did succeed in getting him to take a lie detector test. Chief Justice Warren was in his cell, took the lie detector test, in which he said I had nothing to do with Oswald or a conspiracy. He did it on his own. He happened to be, at the moment, at the time, next to Oswald, and he lost his cool.
Tony Zoppi was a columnist whose beat included the Dallas nightclub scene. He also knew Jack Ruby well, and he agrees with the rabbi that Ruby was not connected to the mob.
That's right. David Schein, you know, I'm mentioned in his book.
Yes, so, in a not too flattering way.
Exactly. You know, Tony Zoppi is an Italian name. I was raised in New Jersey. I enlisted in the Army. I wound up in Texas. I met my late wife there. I got a job as a newspaperman, and I stayed there and went with the Dallas News in 1950 and stayed there until 1965, when I was offered a job in Las Vegas as the entertainment director of the Riviera Hotel. Okay. Schein, I guess because my name is Tony Zoppi, insinuates, doesn't come right out and say it, but insinuates that I am part of the mafia. And if this is the kind of stuff that he puts out, I wouldn't take too much credence.
Well, let's hear from David Schein, the author of Contract on America, The Mafia Murder of JFK, long considered one of the country's leading conspiracy theorists. He says there's no question but that Ruby was a mobster. David, do you want to respond first to Tony's charge?
I report the facts as they're put out in the Warren Commission hearings, the FBI, and the House Select Committee. And what we find is that Tony Zoppi gave two stories about Jack Ruby, both of which are blatantly contradicted by others. We have the House Select Committee didn't believe Zoppi's alibi for Ruby's trip to Cuba. I
didn't provide an alibi for Jack Ruby.
You are contradicted sharply by Louis McWillie and Jack Ruby.
No. I've got it right here in a book. Can I have 1 minute of your time?
Well, do that in the commercial break. You guys can fight about that.
No, I want the audience to hear what's in this book.
The audience will, as soon as you look it up. I just don't want to stand by when you do the research. Okay. David, let me just ask you this. You've heard the rabbi. What about the fact that Ruby denied any part in a conspiracy?
Ruby later, in a note smuggled out of his jail cell, which was published by Newsweek, admitted he made up the story of sparing Jacqueline and Carolyn Kennedy going to the trial. This is an obvious fabrication. I think we need to look at the evidence. There are dozens of FBI documents that describe Ruby's significant participation in illegal gambling, narcotics operations, prostitution. There's one FBI document that talks about Ruby being a frequent visitor and associate of Joseph Civillo, who was the mafia boss of Dallas. I think these documents are more important than the personalities or impressions of individual people.
Do you remember Ruby's quote toward the end of his life, or certainly to Chief Justice Earl Warren, "Take me to Washington, I'm the only man who knows the truth"?
Yes, he said that 7 times during the interview. He said, "I can't tell the truth in Dallas. My life is in danger in Dallas." It was clear that there was something he was afraid of telling there that he wanted to tell in Washington.
I think we have on tape, do we, the confession? Or not yet. We'll have it after the commercial break. Meet Madeline Brown, a woman who claims to have been Lyndon Baines Johnson's mistress, LBJ's mistress, and the mother of their love child. Madeline also claims that she knew Jack Ruby well. True, Madeline?
Yes. I met him in 1952, and Lyndon Johnson's attorney, Jerome Ragsdale, introduced me to Jack Ruby.
He says that, Madeline says that Ruby and Oswald made runs to Cuba.
They ran gun. It was a gun. They were running guns to Cuba. That was why the mafia had Jack Ruby kill Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay, Tony Zoppi is shaking his head in disbelief. We have the Ruby confession right now. Roll it, Jim Bob.
happened so fast and everything else. I can't recall what had happened from the time I came to the bottom of the ramp until the police officers had me on the ground. I have no recollection. No. But I know that they were holding my hand, grappling for the gun.
Did you ever know Oswald before?
Never have known him or seen him before.
Had you ever planned anything like this?
I was so emotionally upset for 3 days.
Is there any truth at all to the stories that Oswald had did in your club or anything?
None whatsoever. It's just fabrication.
That Jack Ruby, I believe, on his deathbed. David, quickly.
There are other tapes of him in his last days that says it was a complete conspiracy. If you knew the facts, you'd be amazed. I think Ruby was clearly afraid and only spoke under certain circumstances.
Did he die of natural causes?
I don't know that. I just know that he is significantly linked to organized crime, that he's close with the mafia boss of Dallas, that the INS found a record of a one-day trip he made to Cuba. This was no little underling punk. He had a significant role in organized crime, and it's ludicrous to think that he happened to kill Oswald out of patriotic indignation.
Be right back. Jack Ruby is on trial right here today. And you'll hear all sides of this controversial man and the role he played in the crime of the century. Yes, Stephen Davis, the man on the end of the panel, is a British writer, a number of documentaries and fact-based films to his credit. His highly acclaimed film, Love Field, is the basis for the highly talked about film Ruby that we're talking about here today. Stephen, is it a fact-based film or is it a flight of fancy?
It's a film inspired by history, but trying to avoid the pitfalls of docudrama, which seem to me to limit the ability of writers like myself to tell the truth as they discover it.
Did Ruby meet Oswald?
I don't know for a fact that Ruby met Oswald, and I don't dramatize the meeting in the film. I find the whole of the evidence of the Kennedy conspiracy, call it what you will, so full of contradictions that I wanted to step back from it and take a wide view and put together a picture of a man I found to be very compelling and himself very full of contradictions.
Was he an arbitrary player and on the world stage in a moment of impetuosity?
I think he might have been, and I think he might have been part of a conspiracy, and I wanted to look at the possibility, if you can accept it, that he could have even been both, that the Kennedy conspiracy was an occasion where there was as much an element of chaos as of conspiracy. Human affairs are rarely as well planned as some conspiracy theorists believe, but equally we'd be naive to believe that in all these accidents and coincidences that suddenly result in the spectacular public murder of an assassin by a club owner. Is that an everyday event?
No.
Hi, I'm Tom. Beverly, I'd like to ask Beverly a question. Bev, you said you know Jack Ruby very well, that he was a good friend of yours, and you worked next door. Did you have just a friendship relationship with him, or was it an intimate relationship?
No, it was just a friendship, a very close friendship, and I loved him very dearly as a friend.
Did you know Wally Weston, I think his name
Yes, sir,
is?
very well.
Wally was the comedian in Jack's Club?
Married to Shari Angel.
It's funny, I've been on this story so long that years and years ago, back I had a program called Good Night America. I interviewed this guy, Wally Weston, and after we heard your sensational claim that you were introduced to Oswald by Jack Ruby, we started thinking, Steve North, the reporter on the story way back then, and me, started thinking there is someone else who corroborates that claim. It was Wally Weston, the comedian at Jack's Club, on my program, Good Night America, more than 15 years ago, and we found a clip. Don't laugh at my haircut. We found a clip. Roll it.
Jack was right behind him then, because he was coming this way. And when I hit him, like Jack caught him under the arms. And he said, "You son of a bitch, I told you never come in here again." And when it was over, I introduced another act, and I went back to Jack, and I said, "Jack," I said, "who is this?" He said, "Just forget about it." He said, "The guy's a jerk." He said, don't pay any attention to it.
Let me stop you there, Wally. How sure are you, Wally?
Of what?
That was Lee Oswald.
Oh, I know. I mean, if it was anyone else, he would certainly come forward now and say, "Hey, it was me." Because the cat I punched is dead.
That's right.
He's right.
He's right. I was there when that happened.
I'm going to take a break. We'll be right back in a moment. Stay tuned.
Don't you hate it when you go to answer the phone and you've just missed the call? All you get is that eeet. It's not a problem anymore. I've got Return Call. It's one of the great Bell Atlantic IQ services. You see, with Return Call, if you don't make it to the phone on time, it's okay.
I got this guy Maxwell on my back. This Castro thing is killing everything. You get the CIA off of my back.
Castro? Forget Castro, Ruby. Castro's history.
What?
We changed our plans. We're out of Cuba.
Have you been using me for a patsy?
Castro's history. And so are you.
Ruby, the new film, yes.
I'm a school teacher from Dallas, Texas, and I'm concerned with the students who go to the movies to see the Ruby movie, the JFK movie. They will see and hear conflicting stories. And what can you comment about that as to what part in history will this play for them?
Stephen, what about that? The fact that you're not a historian, you're a filmmaker, and the movie obviously contradicts not just JFK, but other historical accounts?
I don't think students need to be protected from different interpretations or from contradictions, and I think that the thing that's driving everybody nuts about the Kennedy assassination is nobody can find one final, ultimate, legalistic solution to the whole thing, and it isn't going to arrive. We've got to look at it every which way around.
I agree.
Yes. This is for the rabbi. Do you feel that Ruby knew that he was dying of cancer, and that's why he felt he could do that? It didn't make any difference because he was going to die anyway.
I left Dallas in 1964 in the summer. I did not see Jack Ruby after that. He died approximately 2 or 3 years afterwards. I took copious notes every time I went to jail, and I wrote in my notes, I happened to look at them this afternoon, that he didn't look good. He looked like he was losing weight. Incidentally, I did ask him again and again about Oswald and other mobsters. He told me that he had no connection with anybody in the mafia or the mob except for, what's his name, McWillie?
McWillie.
McWillie. This he admitted to. But he told me he went to Cuba those few days because he wanted to look at the nightclub there. Jack Ruby was a person who wanted recognition. He was a guy who always used the word class. Policemen had class, journalists had class, physicians had class. This is what he was interested in because he never had class. He didn't associate with mobsters.
I have a question for Beverly. You were a 17-year-old dancer. You just Singer, okay. You just happened to be with your Zoom camera, which must have been very expensive at the time, in the right place at the right time, filming Kennedy. I just think it's kind of a coincidence. Were you told to be there? Did anybody suggest
it? No, the camera that I had been a gift to me just a few weeks before. It was an experimental 8mm camera. And I had not used the camera until that day, and there were many young people down there besides me. I was not the only 17-year-old down there.
I have a question for Beverly also. Why would you, without proper ID, give the pictures just to anyone?
Because I was 17 years of age. This was an FBI man who did have proper identification. And like I said before, I had a Prince Albert can full of marijuana in my makeup kit.
You don't still have that same makeup kit, do you? We didn't give it a urine test before the show.
And I don't have the marijuana either.
Okay. Now, Madeline, you claim, of course, that you knew Ruby and that you saw Ruby and Oswald together. Did Ruby love the Kennedys?
No, he did not love the Kennedys. There were a lot. In other words, H.L. Hunt in Dallas more or less controlled Dallas. We operated with organized crime. Jack Ruby, in our opinion, was organized crime in Dallas, Texas. So if H.L. Hunt didn't like anything, he was an oil man. No one in H.L. Hunt despised the Kennedys.
Now, you, of course, allege that LBJ, the successor to JFK, was in some way pleased that President Kennedy had been murdered?
Oh, absolutely. It was a step for his... He had a...
And said, quote...
Well, after that day, being November the 22nd, 3rd, that the Kennedys would never embarrass him again. That was no threat. That was a promise.
Now, we do have two other clips, ancient clips from the Ruby family. They take the opposite view from Madeline's. They say that Ruby did, in fact, love the Kennedys. We'll show those to you in a couple of minutes.
to me, I was very afraid, and I did give an official version of my story in 1969 to an investigator by the name of Gary Shaw in Texas.
David Shine, why isn't Beverly's account more prominently featured in the historical papers, etc.?
I think if you read the books that are based on research and evidence, there are many other witnesses who talk about Ruby knowing Oswald. I think there's 4 others. I don't think at this point there's any question that that was true.
That Ruby knew Oswald?
That's correct.
But
yes.
Tony, you say that's absolute farce.
What's that Ruby knew Oswald? I don't believe it.
Well, let me just respond in 10 seconds. Talking about facts, what Tony just said about Cuba is a blatant lie. It actually contradicts what he said later.
Oh, you guys, I don't want to get off on the sidetrack. Come on.
McWillie
You two can meet after the program and hash out your differences.
I have a question to David.
How much money did you make out of the book? That's the important thing.
Excuse me. Do you believe that the assassination was an attempt by the Cubans to get back at the United States, or the CIA, for putting an alleged hit on Castro?
No, it wasn't. Castro shut down the mafia's casinos in Cuba. The mafia was incensed by that. They were incensed by the Kennedys' crusade against organized crime. And elements of the CIA were also incensed when in 1963 Kennedy clamped down on anti-Castro activity. So if anything, it was the mafia and anti-Castro groups that appear to have been involved in the Kennedy assassination.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to ask just if there was any kind of connection at all with the 2 Kennedy's brothers being assassinated.
Madeline, you say yes. Why?
Yes. Well, Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, both of these people were causing lots of problems in our government. And Robert Kennedy, of course, Lyndon couldn't go on the 68 ticket because of him, so they had, Lyndon said, if I can't go on that 68 ticket, no Kennedy would go.
And the last time you saw Lyndon Johnson?
Was in 69, August of 69.
My question is for anyone on the panel, what can be done about it now? If all of this is true, what can be done about it since the majority of the people involved are dead?
My whole thing for having anything to do with the men who killed Kennedy or the Oliver Stone film has been that I don't think we'll ever solve the assassination of President Kennedy, but I would like to see the American public educated to such a point that there was a conspiracy, there was a cover-up, that it can never happen again in this country to another president. We might not can keep them from being assassinated, but we can keep our government from covering the facts up from us.
Take a break. Be right back. Jack Ruby on trial today.
They took Valachi to Washington. If they took me there, I can tell them what really happened.
Jack, listen to me.
They put him in a protection program.
They're gonna ask for the chair. Now you got to plead insane.
All of Dallas says I'm a hero. I'll walk, Frank.
He did not. He was convicted and sentenced to the electric chair, only to die in custody of cancer. David, are you positive, to a historical certainty, I'm not asking your opinion, I'm asking for your research as a historian, that Jack Ruby was demanding to be taken to Washington to tell the quote-unquote real story?
There's no question about it. There's no question that Ruby's killing of Oswald was a mob hit. In fact, Johnny Russell...
Don't jump there. Don't jump there. Okay. Don't jump there. Stick on the point. Did Ruby demand to be taken to Washington to a historical certainty?
Yes. He asked he said on record, you can read the testimony, I cannot tell the truth in Dallas. I want to go to Washington. My life is in danger in Dallas. These are verbatim quotes from the historical record, not fantasies of people who make things up.
Rabbi Silverman.
In his demented frame of mind, he thought Washington was the only place where he could tell the world that he had nothing to do with Oswald and nothing to do with the conspiracy. Not that there was any other story. I don't know whether there was a conspiracy.
Stop there, Rabbi. Do you think that it's logical that someone should be demanding to be taken out of a jurisdiction to say that you're right, that the official version of history is correct, and all the rest of the stuff is nonsense?
He was so demented. I just read a letter today that he wrote to me in the jail. I read it to my wife coming over, in which he wanted me to go with him to Washington, but we should go through Atlantic City because they were going to kill me also, and they were going to kill him in Dallas. The man was a schizophrenic. He was psychotic. He didn't know what he was saying. He wanted to admit to the Warren Commission that he had nothing to do with Oswald. I'm not saying there was not a conspiracy. There probably was a conspiracy. All I'm saying is that Jack Ruby was not part of the conspiracy. If I were going to have a conspiracy, Jack Ruby would be the last one that I could ever trust to do anything. Do you realize, let's look at the facts. He had 4 minutes to get from sending a Western Union money order in the post office to the city jail. 4 minutes. He did not know that Oswald would appear at the time. He thought Oswald was transferred 30 minutes before. It was just happenstance. He was there. He was impetuous. He pulled the trigger.
I'd like to respond. We just need to look at the evidence. Ruby took an overnight trip to Cuba on organized crime business. This is what the House Select Committee found. He was a frequent visitor of the mafia boss of Dallas. He ran gambling operations. Now, not all mobsters have gray suits and have drawn faces. He was a gregarious person, but he was a mobster. There's no question. The record demonstrates that.
Tony.
False. I want to get back to the picture. I think that primarily is why we're here. There's a scene in that picture showing Jack Ruby in Las Vegas, and the setting is very similar to the Sands Hotel in the old days. He's with this girl, Candy Kane, who has the second lead in the picture, and yet at the
Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks.
Right, and at the end of the picture...
Easy on the eyes, very easy on the eyes.
He puts in a disclaimer saying this is a fictional character. So much for his veracity. Then... He's sitting there with Sam Giancana, Joe Schmo, whoever it is, all the mob guys from all over the country. And here's this Jack Ruby. Unbelievable. Okay, and he's got the girl sitting next to him.
The point quickly, Tony?
A man, obviously portraying Sinatra, comes over and says, "Can I borrow your girl?" And he takes her over 4 tables, and there's President Kennedy with a big party. And he drops her off at Kennedy's table. And the next scene shows her going up the hallway in a bathrobe and going to the president's suite.
Beverly, were you at the Sands Hotel or someplace like it in Las Vegas with Jack Ruby and others?
I went to Vegas with Jack Ruby over a weekend.
Is there a lot of similarity between you and Candy Kane, the person portrayed in the film?
There are some, yes, sir.
Did you meet President Kennedy in Las Vegas?
No, sir.
Yeah, I sound like a prosecutor. No, sir. Yes, sir.
Emphatically, no.
Did you meet other mobsters there?
Well, first of all, when you meet someone that, and this is what I'm having trouble with, people don't go around and say, "Hello, I'm Sam Giancana with the Mafia." I mean, It just doesn't happen that way. There were people there that later on, when I married a Mafia man,
You married a Mafia man?
George Albert McGann, who was the alleged leader of the Dixie Mafia. At the time of his assassination, he was accounted with 19 murders in the state of Texas. He was a hitman for the Mafia.
You have great taste in boyfriends.
Well, I'm married to a preacher now. Does that count?
All right, take a break.
For transcripts, please send $5 to Geraldo Transcripts, care of Burrell's, P.O. Box 7, Livingston, New Jersey, 07039. Or call 1-800-777-TEXT.